Hi there, this is Scott Stuff for September 22nd, 2008, and today I'm going to do a brief game review of Hero Immortal King by Asmodee Games. The particular one I played is called the Den of Dementia. They actually have 3 of these box sets. It's not a collectible card game in that when you buy a box you get the same set of stuff, but there's 3 different box sets that are available. Now, what's interesting about this game is it can be played either solo or 2 players, and I played it solo, and that's what I'll talk about. I'll briefly talk about the 2 players at the end. This is an adventure game, so what you're doing in the game is you're going through a dungeon attempting to beat up the big bad guy. So first you put together your party of adventurers, buy some items for them, and then venture off. You build up a party of adventurers, and you're going to go into a dungeon. Now the dungeon is represented by 3 stacks of cards. It's about 15 cards that start in each stack. There's a big bad guy card that sits at the top, and when you work your way through any one of the 3 stacks, then you can take on the big bad guy. So what you're doing in the game is plowing your way through the cards. Now, part of what you're going to do is make smart choices about which of the 3 you want to take out, because the cards, they can impact each other. And so you have to decide if you want to deal with a tougher card that's having an impact on some of the other cards, or whatever. Or you can just plow through one stack. If you fail to take out a card, it sits there and taunts you. Well, it doesn't really taunt you, it just sits there unless you make it taunt you and says, "Ha ha, you lost." But anyway, there's a big bad guy that's up top, and once you go all the way through one stack of cards, then you can take him on, and if you beat him, you win. Hooray! So, there's some clever stuff about this game, and there's some annoying stuff about this game. So the clever stuff. The game starts, and you have 4 characters to choose from. Now, in this game, the characters, you've got a rogue, a sorcerer, a priest, and then a multi-class guy. Now, here's the trick, is you can take all 4 of these, you can take just one of them. Each one has a different skill, and the skill is basically the same. It's you get a plus against a certain type of card. So the more of the characters you take, the more built-in pluses you have against different types of cards. Each one also has a power. Now, to use the power, you have to spend mana. Each character starts the game with 1 mana, and some of the monsters give you a mana if you defeat them. The powers all add numbers to a die roll. The basic way you beat up a monster is the monster's going to have a strength. This one, for example, has a strength of 8. You roll a 6-sided die, and you have to beat 8. It's going to be tricky. For something that's bigger than 6, you better have some mana available and a character that can roll and add to that number. So the characters all add in different ways. One character replaces the d6 roll with a 10-sided die roll. Another character adds the number of life points your party has, things like that. Each character also has an ultimate power. And so what will happen is as you beat up the bad guys, you keep the cards, and all the bad guys have little symbols at the top. There's 4 different colors, and these represent your experience. And so you can turn in bad guys with symbols at the top to engage this ultimate power. Now, the more characters you took, the more it costs. If you just took 1 character, it takes 1 card of each color to activate their ultimate power. If you took 2 characters, it takes 2 cards of each color. So I think the most clever part of the game actually is in the setup, because the way it works is you can take up to 5 cards between items and characters. So if I take 1 character, I can take 4 items. If I take 4 characters, I get to take 1 item. Some of the cards in the game are stronger if your party has more adventurers. So that's how the game balances against you taking more adventurers. The items are interesting in that they are varied, which is nice. This is probably the most varied part of all of the things in the game are the items. You can take a potion, which is free, and provides you some healing and things like that. And just so you know, pretty much the only way to heal in this game is to take a potion. I learned that one by losing out the first time. Or you can take really powerful items, which actually cost you experience to play. This item, for example, is very nice. It could destroy all 3 monsters that you're seeing if you roll high enough, but it requires you to discard 1 of each color of card. And so you can take a mix of items that are stronger but that require you to discard your cards, items that are free to play but are just light things like potions. And so that mix of characters and items was the most interesting part of the game I found. The flaw. The flaw with this game is the variety of cards in the dungeon. So what you're doing is you're staring at these stacks of monster cards and deciding what to do. Most of the cards just have a critter and a strength. The thing is, there's not a lot of variety in these cards. So about 13 to 15 of these cards are the same type of monster called Bubble Eye. There's Undead Bubble Eye, there's Red Eye, there's the One Eye, there's Wander Eye. They're all basically the same thing. They have a number for strength. They may have a special ability, which you have to look up. But basically it's, oh, look, here's 1 of 3 Bubble Eyes you can kill. Then you have another 6 cards, which are the exact same touched orc cards, and another 6 cards, which are the same goblin fanatic card. So there's about half the deck. That's the same 3 cards, basically. Then there's 3 of another card, 3 of another card, 3 of another card. There's no single card except for the big bad guy. So what I found is I got fairly bored playing this, especially I played it twice through. The second time through I got fairly bored because there aren't that many different types of cards, and it was pretty common you look down and you'd see 3 of the same thing or 2 and 1 of the same thing. Now what it felt like is if you've ever played Magic the Gathering, is playing Magic the Gathering against like an 8-year-old who says, wow, these cards work well together, so I'm going to put a whole bunch of them in my deck. And that's what it felt like, is the way that the game made combos against you was just by having a bunch of duplicates of the same stuff. So I got pretty bored with that. And basically every turn, the bad guys all have strength numbers. You pick the one with the lowest strength number and you make a roll against it. Usually the strength numbers start at 4 and go up to 10 or 11, and you're rolling a 6-sided die, which means most of the time you're going to have to spend some of your mana in order to beat up the bad guy. So you hope that the bad guy you're beating up gives you mana. And I'd say about 2/3 of the time they did. So that worked well. You got this cycle going. It's like, all right, I can do that. Now, you have 5 strength points in the game, and as the game goes on, if you fail those rolls, you lose those. Again, I found there's only way to get those back in the game was selecting appropriate items, which I wasn't aware of the first time I played. Didn't work out so well. So the game wears you down, and it's got a bit of a cycle in that a lot of the cards in the game overpower you if your strength is weaker than the game's fear. As you lose things, the game builds up fear, and that fear allows the game to be stronger. So the game has a bit of a roller coaster effect in that as long as you're doing okay, you're doing okay, you're doing okay, you're fine. But once you start to slip up, you begin to plummet down this roller coaster, at which case you better hope you're near the end so you can make a run for the bad guy and hope to roll, you know, above a 12 on a 6-sided die. So, that's pretty much it. If you play it 2 players, the second player does things like manipulate the stacks of cards in front of you to try to put worse bad guys in front. They can spend those fear tokens to add pluses to bad guys. They can do a few things. They can set little traps by putting cards face down. But it sounds like really the game is designed as a 1-player game with the second player just being annoying rather than actually doing a whole lot. So that is Hero Immortal King. It's not a game that I see pulling out fairly often because I was pretty much tired of seeing the same sets of bad guys the second time through. I think if they had taken the 45 cards and if they were all different cards, so there was a lot of variety, that would have helped this game tremendously. I think the character selection and item selection is very clever. A lot of variety there. Some interesting decisions to make, but then once you actually start playing the game, the decisions get less interesting. And so your main strategy is, do I focus on one pile or do I take on the weakest thing each time, just try to build up experience so that then I can use those cards to unleash the ultimate power. So anyway, that's got stuff. I'm going to unleash my ultimate power now and do something else.